The thundering hooves broke the stillness of the Wyoming night as Willow Vance clutched her father's old Navy Colt revolver, her knuckles white with tension. The flickering campfire cast long shadows across her weathered canvas tent, revealing silhouettes of mounted men circling her small camp like wolves around wounded prey. Wyoming Territory, 1878. Willow had been traveling west for 3 weeks, following her father's hand-drawn map to the parcel of land he'd purchased before his death. The journey from St. Louis had been arduous, but nothing compared to the terror now gripping her heart as the night riders tightened their circle. "Well, well, what do we have here?" a gravelly voice called out. "A lady camper all alone in Blackwater Canyon? Ain't that just asking for trouble?" Willow stood, the gun partially concealed in the folds of her skirt. At 22, she had learned that showing fear only emboldened men with malicious intent. Her honey blonde hair was tied back in a practical braid, and despite the dust of travel, her face maintained a determined dignity. "I am armed, gentlemen, and I assure you I know how to use this weapon," she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. "I suggest you continue on your way." Laughter erupted from the shadows. She counted at least 5 riders, their faces obscured by bandanas. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a distinctive silver spur that caught the firelight, dismounted and took a step toward her camp. "Hear that, boys? The little lady's going to shoot us all." More laughter. "That's mighty brave, miss, but I reckon you're outmatched." Willow raised the revolver, aiming at the leader's chest. Her hand trembled slightly, but her resolve didn't waver. "I mean it. This is private property, and you are not welcome here." The man took another step forward. "Property, you say? Funny thing about property in these parts. It tends to change hands real quick like." A sudden movement caught Willow's attention. A 6th rider, previously unnoticed, approached from the east. Her heart sank. Another bandit joining the pack. But this rider was different. He rode straight through the circle, positioning his horse between Willow and the approaching leader. The firelight illuminated him clearly. Tall and broad, shouldered in the saddle, wearing a worn leather duster and a Stetson pulled low over his eyes. Unlike the others, he wore no mask, and the light revealed a face weathered by sun and wind, with a strong jaw shadowed by several days' growth of beard. "Evening, gentlemen," the newcomer said, his voice quiet but carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. "Seems like you boys are having some trouble finding your way in the dark." "Wade Zephyr," the leader spat. "This ain't your concern. Ride on." Wade Zephyr. Willow had heard that name before in whispered conversations at trading posts and stagecoach stations. A former Texas Ranger turned bounty hunter with a reputation for unwavering justice and deadly accuracy with a Colt .45. "That's where you're wrong, Sutton," Wade replied. "You and your boys are trespassing on a ladies' camp. That makes it my concern." The man called Sutton shifted uncomfortably, clearly reassessing the situation. "We were just having some fun, Zephyr. No need to get all righteous." "Your idea of fun doesn't sit well with me." Wade's hand rested casually near his holster. "I count 5 of you. Bad odds for a fight, wouldn't you say?" "You threatening us?" Sutton's hand inched toward his own weapon. Wade sighed as if bored by the conversation. "Not threatening, just stating facts. You boys have 2 choices. Ride away now, or I start putting holes in you. Starting with you, Sutton." A tense silence followed. Willow held her breath, the revolver still clutched in her trembling hand. The night riders exchanged glances, clearly calculating their chances. "He's just one man," one of the riders muttered. "One man who's put 12 men in the ground this year alone," another whispered back, "including Jackson and the Miller brothers." Sutton's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. He took a step back. "Come on, boys. Plenty of other diversions down in Silver Creek tonight." The riders retreated slowly, keeping their eyes on Wade until they disappeared into the darkness. The sound of hoofbeats gradually faded, leaving only the crackling of the campfire and Willow's pounding heart. Wade Zephyr remained motionless for several moments, listening. Only when he was certain the danger had passed did he dismount, his movements fluid and controlled. He led his horse, a magnificent dappled gray stallion, to the edge of her camp. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat slightly, "Wade Zephyr. Hope you don't mind the intrusion." Willow lowered her revolver slowly, studying the man who had driven off her attackers with nothing more than his reputation and a steady nerve. "Willow Vance," she replied, "and given the circumstances, Mr. Zephyr, your intrusion is most welcome." In the firelight, she could see him more clearly. He was older than she had initially thought, perhaps 35, with intelligent gray eyes that missed nothing. A thin scar ran along his left cheekbone, and his hands, while strong and capable, bore the marks of a man familiar with both hard work and conflict. "You're a long way from anywhere, Miss Vance," he observed, keeping a respectful distance. "It's not safe for a woman to camp alone in these parts." "I'm not usually so vulnerable," Willow explained, gesturing to a broken wagon wheel propped against a nearby tree. "My wagon axle broke this morning. I was forced to make camp while attempting repairs." Wade glanced at the damaged wheel, then back at Willow. "Those men might return with reinforcements. Sutton's not one to take humiliation lightly." Willow's stomach tightened at the thought. "Do you know them?" "The Sutton gang, rustlers mostly, been terrorizing the area for months." Wade moved toward the fire, warming his hands. "They've grown bolder lately, moving from cattle theft to highway robbery." Willow nodded, the reality of her situation sinking in. "I appreciate your assistance, Mr. Zephyr, but I can't impose on you further. I'm sure you have somewhere to be." A ghost of a smile crossed Wade's face. "As it happens, I don't. I was tracking those men when I saw your campfire." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "If you'll permit me, I'd like to make sure you're safely on your way, come morning. I have some experience with wagon repairs." Willow hesitated. Her father had taught her to be cautious around strangers, especially in the territories. But something in Wade Zephyr's direct gaze suggested trustworthiness, and she was practical enough to recognize that she needed help. "I would be grateful for your assistance, Mr. Zephyr," she finally said, "though I warn you the damage is considerable." "Nothing's unfixable," he replied, and for the first time his smile reached his eyes. "And please, call me Wade." Willow nodded, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Very well, Wade." She busied herself preparing coffee, grateful for something to do with her hands. As she worked, she could feel Wade's eyes on her, not in the predatory way of the bandits, but with a curious assessment. "May I ask what brings you to this remote part of Wyoming Territory, Miss Vance?" he asked, accepting the tin mug she offered him. "Willow, please," she replied, sitting across from him at the fire. "I'm traveling to Pinecrest Valley. My father purchased land there before he passed. I'm going to claim it." Wade's eyebrows rose slightly. "Pinecrest is over 50 miles from here, through rough country. You're traveling alone?" "I had no choice," Willow explained, warming her hands around her own mug. "My father left debts in St. Louis. After settling them, I had just enough for supplies in this journey. I couldn't afford to hire an escort." Wade nodded, his expression thoughtful. "What will you do once you reach this land?" Willow's eyes brightened with determination. "Build a home, establish a small horse breeding operation. My father taught me everything he knew about horses before he died." "That's an ambitious plan for anyone, let alone—" Wade stopped himself. "A woman alone?" Willow finished for him, a challenging note in her voice. "I've been caring for myself since I was 16, Mr. Zephyr. I'm more capable than I appear." "I have no doubt," he replied, and she was surprised by the sincerity in his voice. "But the Wyoming Territory isn't kind to anyone, man or woman, who faces it alone." The conversation lulled as they sat in companionable silence, listening to the night sounds and the occasional pop from the fire. Willow studied Wade covertly. Despite his dangerous reputation, there was something reassuring about his presence, a steadiness that made her feel safer than she had in weeks. "You should rest," Wade finally said, setting down his empty mug. "I'll keep watch tonight." "You need sleep as well," Willow protested. Wade shook his head. "I'm used to long nights. We'll look at that wagon wheel at first light." Sensing it would be futile to argue, Willow retreated to her small tent. She lay awake for some time, listening to Wade's occasional movements around the camp as he tended the fire. For the first time since leaving St. Louis, she fell asleep without fear. Dawn broke with the soft colors of pearl and gold across the Wyoming sky. Willow emerged from her tent to find Wade already examining the broken wagon wheel, his duster and hat hanging on a nearby branch. His horse grazed peacefully nearby, saddled and ready if needed. "Can it be repaired?" she asked, approaching with fresh coffee. Wade accepted the mug gratefully. "Yes, but it'll take most of the day. The axle's cracked too." He gestured to the surrounding pine forest. "Fortunately, there's good wood here for the repairs." They worked together throughout the morning. Wade proved to be as skilled with tools as he was with weapons, carefully fashioning a new spoke for the wheel while instructing Willow on strengthening the axle. She proved a quick study, her small hands dexterous and her mind sharp. By midday, they had made significant progress. Willow prepared a simple meal from her provisions: beans, dried beef, and the last of her bread. As they ate, she found herself curious about the quiet man who had come to her aid. "You mentioned you were tracking those men," she ventured. "Are you still a lawman?" Wade's expression clouded slightly. "Not officially. I left the Rangers 5 years ago." "But you still pursue outlaws?" He nodded, his eyes distant. "Some, when they deserve it." "And the Sutton gang deserves it." Wade met her gaze directly. "They killed a family near Silver Creek last month, parents and a teenage son, left a 12-year-old girl orphaned." His voice remained even, but Willow could hear the controlled anger beneath. "So yes, they deserve it." Willow absorbed this information silently. She had heard about the lawlessness in the territories, but sitting across from a man who had dedicated himself to fighting it made the reality more immediate. "It must be a lonely life," she observed quietly. Something flickered in Wade's eyes, a brief glimpse of vulnerability quickly masked. "It suits me." "Does it?" Willow surprised herself with her boldness. "Or is it just familiar?" Wade studied her for a long moment, and Willow worried she had overstepped, but then his stern expression softened slightly. "You're perceptive, Willow Vance," he said, using her full name in a way that sent an unexpected warmth through her. "Too perceptive for your own good, perhaps." They returned to work, the conversation shifting to more practical matters: the route to Pinecrest Valley, the supplies she would need, the challenges of starting a homestead. Wade's knowledge of the territory was extensive, and Willow found herself taking mental notes of his advice. As the afternoon waned, Wade tested the repaired wheel, securing it to the wagon axle and checking its balance. "It's not perfect," he admitted, "but it should hold until you reach Thornwood. There's a blacksmith there who can make proper repairs." Willow ran her hand along the smooth wood of the new spoke. "It's remarkable work, Wade. I'm grateful." A distant rumble of thunder interrupted the moment. Wade glanced at the darkening western sky. "Storm's coming," he observed. "We should secure your wagon and reinforce your camp. It won't do to travel in this weather." They worked quickly, Wade showing Willow how to anchor her tent more securely and create a shelter for her horse and supplies. The first heavy drops began to fall just as they finished, driving them back to the protection of the campfire, which Wade had built under an improvised canopy of pine branches and canvas. The rain increased steadily, a rhythmic drumming against the makeshift shelter. Despite the weather, Willow felt a strange contentment as she sat beside Wade, sharing the last of her coffee. "Tell me about Pinecrest Valley," he said unexpectedly. Willow smiled, warming to the subject. "My father described it as the most beautiful place he'd ever seen. A valley surrounded by mountains, with a clear river running through it. The soil is rich, the grazing excellent for horses." Her voice softened. "He always planned to take us there, my mother, my brother, and me. But Mother and Thomas died of fever when I was 15. Father never recovered from the loss, though he kept saving for that land." "And now you're fulfilling his dream," Wade observed. Willow nodded. "And mine. I've never belonged anywhere, not really. St. Louis was just a place. I want a home that's truly mine. Wade's expression grew distant again. A worthy ambition. What about you? Willow asked. Where do you call home? Wade stared into the fire. I was born in Texas, but home, he shook his head slightly. A man in my line of work can't afford attachments. That sounds like a lonely way to live, Willow said softly. It's a necessary way to live, Wade corrected, though without harshness. The men I hunt would use any connection against me. The conversation lulled as the rain intensified. Lightning illuminated the sky, followed by the crash of thunder. Willow's horse whinnied nervously, and she moved to soothe the animal. As she returned to the shelter, a particularly violent gust of wind threatened to collapse their canopy. Wade reacted quickly, securing a loose corner. The movement brought him close to Willow, close enough that she could see droplets of rain clinging to his dark hair and the intensity in his gray eyes. For a moment, neither moved, separated by mere inches. Then Wade stepped back, clearing his throat. Should hold now, he said, his voice rougher than before. Willow nodded, oddly breathless. Thank you. The storm continued through the evening, forcing them to remain in close proximity. They talked as darkness fell. Wade sharing carefully edited stories from his ranger days, Willow describing her life in St. Louis and her dreams for Pinecrest Valley. Despite the circumstances, or perhaps because of them, Willow found herself laughing more than she had in years. Wade proved to be a thoughtful listener, his initial reserve gradually giving way to a dry humor that surprised and delighted her. There were moments when his guard seemed to drop completely, revealing glimpses of a different man, one who might have led a very different life under other circumstances. You should have seen his face when I told him I could outride any man in the county, Willow was saying, recounting a story about a particularly condescending suitor in St. Louis. He challenged me to a race then and there, certain he would win and teach me humility. She grinned. I beat him by 3 lengths. My father laughed for days. Wade's smile was genuine. I don't doubt it for a moment. You strike me as a woman who accomplishes what she sets her mind to. Is that a compliment, Mr. Zephyr? Willow teased. A simple observation, he replied, but his eyes held warmth that belied his casual tone. The rain finally subsided near midnight, leaving behind the fresh scent of wet earth and pine. Wade insisted on taking the night watch again, despite Willow's protests. You need your strength for tomorrow's journey, he said firmly. Reluctantly, Willow retreated to her tent, but sleep eluded her. Her mind kept returning to the man sitting by the fire, his quiet strength, his unexpected kindness, and the moments when something deeper than mere politeness had flashed in his eyes. Morning brought clear skies and the chirping of birds. Willow emerged from her tent to find Wade already preparing breakfast rabbit he had snared overnight, cooked with wild onions and the last of her potatoes. You didn't need to do this, she said, accepting the plate he offered. Consider it payment for your hospitality, he replied, his focus on his own meal. As they ate, Willow sensed a subtle shift in Wade's demeanor, a return to the reserved manner of their first meeting. He spoke of practical matters, the route she should take, places to avoid, where to find water and game if her supplies ran low. His voice was steady and businesslike. You're planning to leave, she realized aloud. Wade nodded, not meeting her eyes. The storm gave Sutton and his men time to put distance between us. I need to pick up their trail. Willow felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Of course, you have your work. And you have your journey to complete, Wade added. He finally looked at her directly. You'll reach Thornwood by nightfall if you start within the hour. The blacksmith there, Sam Miller, is a good man. Tell him I sent you and he'll treat you fairly. Willow nodded, struggling to maintain her composure. It was foolish to feel this way about a man she had known for barely a day. Yet there was no denying the connection that had formed between them, tenuous perhaps, but undeniably real. They packed her wagon in silence, Wade checking and double-checking the repairs to ensure they would hold. Willow harnessed her horse, a sturdy chestnut mare named Belle, and secured her provisions. When everything was ready, they stood awkwardly beside the wagon, neither quite knowing how to say goodbye. "I can't thank you enough," Willow finally said. "If you hadn't come along when you did—" "You'd have managed," Wade said with unexpected gentleness. "You're stronger than you know, Willow Vance." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. A map of the safest route to Pinecrest. "I marked the reliable water sources and settlements." Willow accepted it, their fingers brushing momentarily. "Thank you." Wade hesitated, then reached for something else, a small silver star pinned inside his coat. "Take this too. It's my old ranger badge. Show it if you encounter trouble. Most outlaws in these parts still respect the Texas Rangers." Willow stared at the badge, understanding the significance of the gesture. "Wade, I can't, please," he insisted quietly. "It would ease my mind to know you had it." She accepted the badge, closing her fingers around the cool metal. "I'll return it to you someday." A smile touched Wade's lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Keep it. I have no use for it anymore." He helped her onto the wagon seat, his strong hands steady at her waist. For a brief moment, he remained close, looking up at her with an unreadable expression. "Godspeed, Willow Vance," he said softly. "May you find what you're searching for." Then he stepped back, mounted his gray stallion, and with a final nod, rode away in the direction the Sutton gang had fled. Willow watched until he disappeared among the trees, a strange emptiness settling in her chest. With a sigh, she urged Belle forward, beginning the next leg of her journey. The repaired wheel held steady, and the weather remained clear small mercies that did little to lift her spirits. It was foolish to feel this way, she told herself repeatedly as the miles passed. Wade Zephyr was a man who lived by his gun, a solitary figure who had made it clear that attachments were a luxury he couldn't afford. Their paths had crossed briefly, nothing more. Yet, as the day progressed, she found herself replaying their conversations, remembering the rare moments when his guard had dropped and something genuine had shown through his carefully maintained facade. True to Wade's prediction, she reached Thornwood shortly before sunset. It was a small settlement, little more than a trading post, a saloon, a handful of houses, and the blacksmith shop Wade had mentioned. Sam Miller proved to be a burly, bearded man with kind eyes and capable hands. When Willow mentioned Wade Zephyr's name, his demeanor warmed considerably. "Any friend of Wade's is welcome here," he declared, examining her wagon. "He saved my brother's life during a Comanche raid back in '69. Never asked for anything in return." As he worked on properly repairing her wagon, Sam shared stories about Wade, his reputation for fairness, his skill as a tracker, and his unyielding pursuit of justice. It painted a picture of a man respected and admired, if somewhat feared, throughout the territory. "Does he have family?" Willow found herself asking as Sam finished the repairs. The blacksmith's expression grew solemn. "Had a wife and daughter years back. Lost them in a raid while he was away on ranger business." He glanced at Willow curiously. "He didn't tell you?" Willow shook her head, her heart aching for the grief Wade must have endured. "No, he didn't mention them," Sam nodded slowly. "Doesn't talk about it. Never has. Some say that's what drives him hunting down men who hurt the innocent. A form of atonement, maybe." The insight explained much about Wade's demeanor, the carefully maintained distance, the reluctance to form attachments, the dedication to his dangerous work. Willow spent a restless night at the small boarding house in Thornwood, her dreams filled with Wade's face and the echo of unspoken words. Morning brought a surprise. As Willow prepared to continue her journey, a young boy approached her with a package. "Mr. Miller said to give you this," the child announced, handing over a carefully wrapped bundle. Inside, Willow found a well-crafted hunting knife in a leather sheath, along with a note in Sam's rough handwriting. "Wade would want you to have protection. Good luck in Pinecrest. If you need anything, Thornwood isn't far." The gesture brought tears to Willow's eyes. She secured the knife beneath the wagon seat and continued her journey with renewed determination. The The next week passed in a blur of travel. Following Wade's map, Willow made steady progress through the Wyoming wilderness. The route he had marked avoided the worst terrain and led her to safe camping spots with access to water and game. His knowledge of the land proved invaluable, and more than once, Willow found herself silently thanking him for his foresight. As the days passed, the landscape began to change. The rugged plains gave way to rolling foothills, and in the distance, the jagged peaks of the Bighorn Mountains appeared on the horizon. Willow's spirits lifted as she recognized landmarks from her father's descriptions. On the 8th day after leaving Thornwood, she crested a hill and gasped at the vista below. A lush valley stretched before her, bisected by a winding river that gleamed silver in the afternoon sun. Pine forests dotted the slopes, interspersed with meadows of wildflowers. In the distance, a small plume of smoke suggested a settlement or homestead. Pinecrest Valley, just as her father had described it. With renewed energy, Willow guided the wagon down the sloping trail toward her destination. According to her father's papers, his land was located near the eastern edge of the valley, bordered by the river and extending into the foothills. As she approached the valley floor, Willow noticed riders in the distance, 3 men moving purposefully toward her. Instinctively, her hand moved to the knife Sam had given her, but as the riders drew closer, she relaxed slightly. They appeared to be local ranchers rather than bandits. The leader, a gray-haired man with a weathered face and kind eyes, raised his hand in greeting as they approached. "Welcome to Pinecrest, miss," he called out. "Don't often see new faces this time of year, especially not a lady traveling alone." "Thank you," Willow replied. "I'm Willow Vance. My father, Harold Vance, purchased land here several years ago. I've come to claim it." The man's eyes widened in recognition. "Vance, you say?" "Well, I'll be. We wondered if anyone would ever come for that parcel." He touched his hat respectfully. "Walter Morgan, madam. I own the spread just west of your father's land." Walter introduced his companions, his son Caleb, and their ranch hand, Josiah. All 3 men were polite and welcoming, offering to escort Willow to her property. "It's about 3 miles east," Walter explained. "Good land, with river access and plenty of grazing. Your father chose well." As they rode, Walter filled Willow in on the small community of Pinecrest Valley, a dozen or so families scattered across the valley, mostly ranchers and farmers who had settled in the past decade. They maintained a peaceful existence, largely isolated from the troubles that plagued other parts of the territory. "We look out for each other here," Walter explained. "Have to, being so far from any real town or law enforcement." When they reached her father's land, Willow was overwhelmed by its beauty. A natural clearing sat near the river, bordered by pine trees on 3 sides and offering a breathtaking view of the mountains. It was the perfect spot for a home. Walter and his companions helped Willow establish a temporary camp, promising to return the next day with materials and assistance to begin building a proper cabin before winter set in. "My wife Caroline will be along too," Walter assured her. "She'll be beside herself with excitement at having another woman in the valley. Our nearest female neighbor is 15 miles away." That night, alone in her tent for the first time on her own land, Willow felt both elated and strangely melancholy. She had achieved what she set out to do, reached the land her father had dreamed of, and found it even more beautiful than described. The people of the valley seemed kind and welcoming, offering community and support. Yet as she gazed at the stars overhead, her thoughts drifted inevitably to Wade Zephyr. She wondered where he was tonight, whether he had caught up to the Sutton gang, if he ever thought of their brief time together. The Silver Ranger badge rested in her pocket, a tangible reminder of the man who had saved her life and then ridden away. True to their word, the Morgans returned the next morning with additional help, 2 neighboring families eager to welcome the valley's newest resident. The women brought food and household items, while the men brought tools and lumber cut from a nearby sawmill. Barn first, then the house, Walter declared. Winter's coming, and your horse needs shelter more urgently than you do. You can stay with us until your cabin's built. Willow protested at first, unwilling to impose, but Caroline Morgan's warm insistence eventually won out. It's how things are done here, the older woman explained. When we first arrived, our neighbors housed us for 3 months while our place was built. Now, we pass on the favor. The next weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Willow worked alongside her new neighbors, learning the skills necessary for frontier living. She helped raise the frame of her barn, learned to split shingles for the roof, and assisted Caroline in preserving food for the coming winter. By early October, the barn was complete, and the foundation for her cabin was laid. The work was exhausting but fulfilling, giving Willow a sense of accomplishment she had never known in St. Louis. Yet, in quiet moments, particularly at night when she retired to the small guest room in the Morgan home, Willow found herself thinking of Wade. She had shared her plans and dreams with him during that storm-filled night, and somehow it felt wrong that he couldn't see how those dreams were now taking shape. One evening, as the first snow dusted the mountaintops, Walter Morgan returned from a supply run to the distant town of Riverton with news that sent a chill through Willow's heart. "Heard about a shootout near Thornwood," he reported as the family gathered for dinner. "That outlaw gang that's been causing trouble, the Suttons apparently ran into a bounty hunter. 2 of the gang dead, the rest scattered." Walter shook his head grimly. "The bounty hunter was wounded pretty bad. Man named Zephyr, they said." The plate Willow was holding slipped from her fingers, shattering on the floor. "Wade Zephyr?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Is he alive?" Walter looked at her in surprise. "You know him?" "He saved my life on the journey here," Willow explained, struggling to keep her voice steady. "What else did you hear?" Walter's expression softened with understanding. "They took him to Doc Wilson's in Thornwood. That's all I know, Willow. I'm sorry." That night, Willow made a decision. At dawn, she approached Walter with determination in her eyes. "I need to go to Thornwood," she announced. "Today." Walter studied her face and nodded slowly. "I figured you might. Caleb can accompany you. It's not safe to travel alone, especially with winter coming on." Willow packed quickly, taking only essentials. Carolyn pressed a package of medical supplies into her hands before she departed. "For your friend," the older woman said gently. "Doc Wilson's a good physician, but supplies are always scarce out here." The journey to Thornwood took 3 days, made more difficult by early snowfall in the mountain passes. Caleb proved to be a capable travel companion, navigating the increasingly treacherous trails with confidence. When they finally reached the small settlement, Willow headed directly to Doc Wilson's clinic, a modest cabin at the edge of town. Her heart pounded as she knocked on the door, uncertain what she would find inside. The doctor who answered was younger than she expected, with kind eyes and a tired face. "Can I help you, miss?" "I'm here about Wade Zephyr," Willow said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I heard he was wounded." Something like surprise flickered across the doctor's face. "He is. May I ask your connection to Mr. Zephyr?" "I'm a friend," Willow replied simply. "Please, how is he?" The doctor hesitated, then stepped aside to let her enter. He took 2 bullets, one to the shoulder, another that grazed his side. Fever set in afterward. "He's been fighting it for nearly 2 weeks." Willow's stomach clenched with fear. "Will he recover?" "If the fever breaks, yes. He's strong." The doctor led her to a small back room. "He's been asking for someone, a woman. I thought he was delirious, but perhaps—" He opened the door, and Willow's breath caught in her throat. Wade lay on a narrow bed, his face pale beneath his tan, his breathing shallow. Bandages wrapped his shoulder and torso, and even in sleep, his expression was taut with pain. "Wade," she whispered, moving to his bedside. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice, fever bright but lucid. For a moment, he stared at her as if uncertain she was real. "Willow," he murmured, his voice raspy from disuse. "You're in Pinecrest." "I was," she confirmed, taking his hand gently. "I came when I heard you were hurt." A faint smile touched his lips. Stubborn woman. You're one to talk about stubbornness, she replied, blinking back tears. Fighting outlaws single-handedly. Got careless, Wade admitted, wincing as he shifted slightly. Sutton had more men than I expected. Did you get him? Willow asked softly. Wade nodded, his eyes closing briefly. He won't harm anyone else. Willow stayed by Wade's side for the next 3 days, leaving only when Doc Wilson insisted she rest. The fever broke on the second night, and by the third day, Wade was strong enough to sit up and take solid food. As his strength returned, so did his questions about her presence in Thornwood. You shouldn't have come, he said on the fourth morning, watching as she changed his bandages. The journey is dangerous this time of year. I had an escort, Willow replied calmly, and I couldn't stay in Pinecrest after hearing you were wounded. Wade's eyes softened. Your land, is it everything your father promised? Willow smiled, her hands gentle as she secured the fresh bandage. Everything and more. I've begun building a home there. The neighbors have been incredibly kind. I'm glad, Wade said sincerely. You deserve that happiness. A week passed and Wade's recovery progressed steadily. He began taking short walks with Willow's assistance, his natural strength returning more quickly than Doc Wilson had anticipated. During these walks and in the quiet evenings they spent in conversation, something shifted between them. The connection that had begun during that stormy night at her camp deepened into something neither could deny. Wade spoke more openly about his past, his years with the Rangers, the loss of his wife and daughter to a Comanche raid, and the guilt that had driven him to pursue justice ever since. Willow shared her own losses and dreams, the challenges of creating a new life in Pinecrest, and her determination to succeed. As December approached and Wade's strength returned, the inevitable question of what came next hung between them. One evening, as they sat before the fire in Doc Wilson's small parlor, Wade finally addressed it. I should be fit to travel within the week, he said, studying the flames rather than meeting her eyes. Willow's heart constricted. And where will you go? Wade was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally admitted. The Sutton gang is finished. There's always other outlaws, other bounties. Is that what you want? Willow asked quietly. To continue living that life? Wade looked at her then, his gray eyes troubled. It's the only life I've known for a long time. It doesn't have to be, Willow said, gathering her courage. Wade, come to Pinecrest. He stared at her, clearly caught off guard by the directness of her invitation. Pinecrest needs protection, she continued quickly. Walter Morgan told me they've had trouble with rustlers in the past. The valley has no official law enforcement. She hesitated, then added softly, and I would like you there. Wade's expression softened, but doubt remained in his eyes. Willow, I'm not sure I'm meant for settled life anymore. After Elizabeth and Sarah died, You closed yourself off, Willow finished for him. I understand that, Wade. But you don't have to be alone anymore. She reached for his hand, her touch gentle but sure. I'm not asking for promises. Just come to Pinecrest. See if there might be a place for you there. The struggle was visible on his face, the pull of the solitary existence he had known for years against the possibility she offered. Finally, he nodded slowly. When you return to Pinecrest, he said quietly, I'll come with you. For a time. It was enough. Willow smiled, hope warming her heart for the first time in weeks. They left Thornwood 2 days later, traveling with a supply wagon bound for the western settlements. The journey was slow due to Wade's still healing wounds and the worsening weather, but Willow found herself treasuring these days on the trail. Wade was different now, more open, less guarded in his words and expressions. He spoke of the future as a possibility rather than an obligation to be endured. And occasionally, when he thought she wasn't looking, Willow caught him watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. They reached Pinecrest Valley as the first major snowfall of the season blanketed the landscape. Walter and Caroline Morgan welcomed them warmly, insisting they both stay at the Morgan Ranch until Wade was fully recovered and Willow's cabin was completed. "We've made progress on your place while you were gone," Walter informed Willow. "Walls are up, roof's on. Still needs windows and interior work, but it's coming along." The Morgan homestead was comfortable and welcoming, filled with the warmth of family life. Wade was initially reserved around their hosts, but the Morgans' genuine hospitality gradually drew him out. He began helping with ranch chores as his strength returned, demonstrating a natural aptitude for working with the Morgans' horses. "He has a way with them," Walter observed to Willow one afternoon as they watched Wade gentle a spirited colt in the corral. "Reminds me of how you described your father's horse skills." As December deepened, the valley prepared for Christmas. Willow divided her time between helping Caroline with holiday preparations and working on her cabin, determined to have it habitable by the new year. Wade joined her on these trips to her property, contributing his strength and skills to the construction. They worked well together, anticipating each other's needs and falling into an easy rhythm that felt both natural and significant. One evening, as they stood in what would become the main room of her cabin, admiring the newly installed windows that overlooked the snow-covered valley, Wade finally spoke of the future. "This is good land," he said quietly. "Your father chose well." Willow nodded, watching as the setting sun painted the mountains gold and crimson. "It's everything I hoped for." Wade was silent for a moment, then added, "It would support horses well. A breeding operation, like you planned." "That's still my intention," Willow confirmed. "Once the cabin is finished, I'll start building proper corrals and acquiring stock." "You'll need help," Wade observed, his tone carefully neutral. Willow turned to face him. "Are you offering Mr. Zephyr?" The corner of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. "Perhaps I am, Miss Vance." Their eyes met, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had grown steadily since that first night by the campfire. "I should warn you," Willow said softly. "If you stay, I may never let you leave." Wade's expression grew serious. "I've spent 5 years running from attachments, Willow, convincing myself that solitude was safer." He took a step closer to her. "Then you appeared in that firelight, facing down outlaws with nothing but courage and a Navy Colt, and something changed." Willow's heart beat faster as Wade reached out, gently touching her cheek. "I'm not good with words," he continued, "but I know that for the first time since I lost my family, I can imagine a future that isn't defined by vengeance and solitude." "Wade," Willow whispered, leaning into his touch. "I can't promise I won't carry the past with me," he said honestly. "But if you'll have me, Willow Vance, I'd like to help you build this dream of yours, and perhaps find a new one of my own along the way." Her answer was to close the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that spoke more eloquently than words. Wade's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, expressing all the emotion that had built between them since that fateful night when he had stood between her and danger. When they finally parted, Wade rested his forehead against hers, a smile playing at his lips. "I take that as a yes," Willow laughed softly. "Yes, Wade Zephyr. That's a definite yes." Christmas in Pinecrest Valley was a community celebration, with families gathering at the largest ranch for a feast and festivities. Willow and Wade attended together, their new relationship apparent to all who saw them. Caroline Morgan squeezed Willow's hand as they helped prepare the holiday meal. "I knew it the moment you rode out to find him," she said with a knowing smile. "Some connections are simply meant to be." The new year brought a flurry of activity. With the help of neighbors, Willow's cabin was completed by mid-January, and she moved in with pride and satisfaction. Wade, true to his word, stayed in Pinecrest, initially taking a small cabin on the Morgan property while helping both with their ranch and Willow's developing homestead. By spring, the foundation of their partnership had solidified into something deeper. Wade proposed on a warm May evening as they sat on the porch of Willow's cabin, watching the sunset paint the valley in vibrant colors. "I'm not a perfect man," he said, holding her hand in his, "but I love you, Willow Vance, and if you'll have me as your husband, I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of you." Their wedding took place in June, with the entire valley in attendance. Walter Morgan gave the bride away, and the celebration lasted well into the night, a joyous affirmation of new beginnings. Wade moved into Willow's cabin, now their home, and together they began building the horse-breeding operation she had envisioned. Wade's reputation brought unexpected benefits, as ranchers from surrounding areas sought out their expertise and stock, quickly establishing the Zephyr Ranch as a respected name in the territory. When trouble occasionally found its way to Pinecrest Valley, rustlers drawn by prospering ranches or outlaws seeking refuge, Wade's skills as a former lawman proved invaluable. The valley residents elected him as their unofficial sheriff, a position he accepted with humility and dedication. "Never thought I'd wear a badge again," he remarked to Willow after pinning his old Texas Ranger star, the one he had given her that first night, to his vest. "It was always a part of who you are," she replied, straightening the badge with pride, justice, and protection. "But now you're not doing it alone." As years passed, their ranch flourished, as did their love. When their daughter Elizabeth Caroline Zephyr was born in the spring of 1880, Wade held the infant with trembling hands, overwhelmed by emotions he had thought lost to him forever. "She's perfect," he whispered, gazing down at the baby's face and a perfect blend of his features and Willow's. Willow watched them with tears of joy. "She is, and so is this life we've built." Standing on their porch as twilight settled over Pinecrest Valley, with their daughter cradled between them and the home they had created surrounding them, Wade and Willow Zephyr found the peace and belonging that had eluded them both for so long. What had begun with night riders surrounding a woman's camp, a chance encounter born of danger and necessity, had transformed into a love neither had expected, but both had ultimately embraced. In each other, they had found not just companionship, but completion. Two souls who had wandered separately until that fateful night when a cowboy stood in the firelight and changed both their destinies forever.